Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Tea Break Club podcast. Now, today I'm here with a very good friend of mine, a special guest, Mr. Alex Byard-Cooke.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm not too bad, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thank you for having me down.
Oh, it's a pleasure, mate. I knew straight away when I started doing this that I was going to get you on here and get you to talk,
It's funny because I was listening to the episode you did with your dad. Was that the first episode?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I was listening to it in the car at B&M Bargains in the car park waiting for Beth to do some shopping.
Amazing.
And I was just sat there thinking, I hope he asked me.
Oh,
and then
that's
literally
amazing.
2 days later you asked me. I was like, oh, that'll do me.
Perfect. That's like a kind of B&M manifesting.
Yeah,
I like it. It's going to catch
and
on.
cheap bin bags as well. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. To be fair, I was there yesterday, actually. In fact, can you smell that Airwick Christmas smell? That right there, that's a B&M bargain.
Very festive.
Absolutely. And the advent calendar you can see over there.
I clocked that on the way and I thought, he's prepared this year.
Absolutely. 30 years old, still doing that.
A mere 7 days from bonfire night. And he's ready. He's ready.
It's only a matter of time before I got the lights up, mate. Honestly. That's it. That neon doesn't count,
No, is that not seasonal?
No,
that
I don't
all
think
year
so,
round?
Yeah. That's literally all the time. Absolutely. So, first question for you. This is the Tea Break Club podcast. Now, I'm offering you a hot drink on your tea break.
Yes.
What are you having?
I'm going to sound like a 4-year-old kid here, but it'd be a hot chocolate with marshmallows and cream.
What a great choice.
For some reason, never been a tea or coffee fan. I'll drink a cup of tea.
Yeah.
To be polite sometimes, because sometimes you'll get in a situation where someone just makes you a cup of tea, don't you? And then you're like, well, I'll drink that. But I would never choose it. Which is odd because I'll make Beth cups of tea every day, but I'll never drink it myself.
So how often do you have a hot chocolate then?
Again, that's quite seasonal. I'll be having a few now in the lead up to Christmas, but 4 or 5 a year.
That's it.
That's about it. Yeah, that's my hot drinks done.
Interesting. So this is kind of like the Hot Chocolate Club podcast.
Yeah,
then,
yeah. But I'll always have a tea break. If there's one going, I'll sit down with a can of Coke and pretend it's a tea break all day.
Okay, I love it. So on your tea break. Because obviously, what do you do for work at the moment?
So it's quite varied at the minute, mainly through the daytime. Fencing, animal fencing, mixed in with some fabrication and metalwork, and as well as the fencing, building stables and animal houses and shelters and that kind of thing. So you'll start early enough, and then you'll have your morning tea break. And to be fair, none of the guys I work with really drink tea because we're usually in the middle of the field.
Of course,
so, we're always on soft drinks. There has been talk someone was going to buy a DeWalt kettle or a Makita kettle, but it's not happened yet. So tea break, just soft drinks. Really,
I like it.
Soft drinks.
So, as we've talked about with this before, and I feel like you're a prime example of this, that the Tea Break Club is all about using your free time to do the things that you love. Now, what is the thing that you love?
Mainly, and it mainly stems from playing drums, but music production and playing in general, from drumming all the way through to recording and mixing. That's where I get a real buzz when I'm doing it. So if I've got spare time and I'm doing that, I'm happy.
Yeah, and that's the ABC that I know. That's the ABC I've worked with over this time. And I think the things that I associate you with in terms of your music history are bands like Ginger Tom.
Yep.
Absolutely. Obviously, I'm trying to think about the first time that we played in a band together.
Yeah, it was weird because we went to school together, obviously, and you were the year above. We kind of had bands going on our own, and then only really sort of fell into playing just as I left school.
Yeah.
One of the first things that I played with you was going back into the feeder schools.
Yes, that's right, absolutely, in the jazz band stuff.
So I'd just literally, that was my first year at college. So that shows you how late on into school we'd started doing that. Because you were in sixth form, weren't you?
That's right,
you got me back in. Obviously, there was me and Joe that used to play with you quite a lot. And I don't know if Joe was unavailable or something, but I remember coming in for that and then...
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But I think we had recorded stuff before that, obviously, because we played at the prom as well that year on the lawn.
This is really funny because I was thinking about this earlier and I want to come back to that.
Right.
Because,
that must have been after that, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the thing. I think there's a trajectory to be had.
Yeah.
And today... we are going to talk about an album that we think, we've discussed this before, listeners, right? We've obviously prepared this a little bit.
Yeah.
But the format of this podcast that we're going to try, ABC and I are going to try, is talking about a specific album that we think is relevant to us and connects us in some way.
Yep.
So we didn't really float any other ideas. We picked one specific album, right? Didn't we? So what album did we pick?
It's Songs About Jane by Maroon 5.
Now, do you know what year that came out? This is not a test.
Oh, that is a test. We must have been at secondary school.
Okay, interesting.
Or was it before that?
It is for both of us, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's got to be 2002?
Fantastic.
Is it
done.
really?
2002.
No way.
So how does an album made in 2002 influence us to make music together? Because that's a broad question, I know.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But can you remember, because the reason why I think we've chosen this is because the first thing that I think we recorded together and put out into the world was a cover version of This Love.
It was either the first or the second.
Yes.
I remember one attempt before to put something out, a Phil Collins cover.
Phil Collins, yeah.
Which we tracked, and it didn't ever make it to light for one reason or other. It was
still got that somewhere.
It was a pain. Before we knew how to count properly, we were trying to get the pushes right, and we were really struggling. So we tracked that, and that was actually in the bedroom.
Yeah, that's
at my mum and
right.
dad's house. So that's really early days. I think we had that set of Shaw mics, didn't we? I think we had about 4 inputs to play with.
Yeah.
Dan Jones was there.
Yes,
Shout out Dan Jones.
Here he is, absolutely.
But yeah, and then I think after that, it was either because I moved down into the garage.
Yeah.
I remember you were at mine one day. We're talking through big plans in our heads and that, and what it was going to look like.
Yeah.
And then, we went in and literally in its bare form, set up a drum kit and some guitars and whatnot, and recorded. I think we did Sex on Fire and This Love, didn't we?
Yes.
In the space of a couple of months, a few months.
Yes.
I can't remember which came first.
That's a very good point, actually.
I think Sex on Fire might have been the first thing that we put out together.
Interesting, okay.
Because, and the reason that I think that is because there's no video for that. The audio for that on my
audio?
YouTube
Right.
is just a picture.
Yeah.
Whereas This Love, flip minnow,
Yes.
enter.
I thought it might have been with
Yes,
the flip camera,
it
which
was.
we did Don't Let Them Stop You Dancing with as well. That
Yes,
was on
we
the
did.
flip.
Yeah, we did. Was that when we did it live at Cass Corner? That was on.
So there's that one, but there's also the music video for the actual thing itself, which is me, you, and John are kind of in the studio, and then 90% of the rest of it is footage driving from Bawtry to Branton.
Yes,
really inventive video technique. Just let's fill that gap with that.
I remember it going past school.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. So straight down Hurst Lane.
Yeah.
So, question for you then. This is the thing that kind of frames this. What year did we release This Love? I checked this before as well, so I do know the answer to this.
2009.
Okay, so it's 2010.
Right, okay.
Right? And you mentioned that we played together at your prom.
It wasn't my prom.
Okay.
It was. That must have been a bit later because
that's
Sam
2000,
Roberts
that's 2000.
and Sam Swinnerton were with us then.
Yes.
So that must have been a prom for...
I think that was Lizzie's prom, actually.
I'm going to start... I can't name names, but I think it was the year below Lizzie.
Oh.
Or it might have been Lizzie's.
I think it was Lizzie's prom. I think it was Lizzie, because there's a picture of us with Lizzie.
Oh, that makes sense.
So
then.
that would
make yeah.
But and this is where things come together. 2009 would have been your prom.
Yep.
And I definitely played at your prom.
Yes, you did.
And in that set list was This Love.
Yes.
Now, I know that because I can remember quite vividly playing it, but I can't remember who was in the band with me.
I think...
Do you think it was Joe?
Yeah. Were you under the covered way, or were you...
We were in the hall.
In the hall.
And I got one of those headset mics on. Because I was basically there in a kind of a play the keys background capacity. Yeah. Don't know who else was in the band.
It must have been Joe. I'm guessing it was Joe. Shout out Joe Booth.
Absolutely.
Fantastic drummer.
100%. And to be fair, he's an interesting person to talk about with this album because I remember, obviously both of you were taught by the same person.
Yes.
And this album was cited by both you and Joe, as being a great album to play along with.
Yeah, and I think, going back to your previous question about how did that come to be an album that inspired us so much, I think that's possibly part of where it stems from for me. Because if you look at bands like Maroon 5, they're very commercially viable.
Yep.
So they're in the charts a lot, so you hear it a lot. But then when you strip that back, a lot of commercially viable music's either very simple or very formulated. And I think the Maroon 5 thing caught on with a lot of people because not only were they catchy songs and poppy songs, but the instrumentation was worth learning properly.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is why I think Mick would push me and Joe towards playing things like that.
And it's a sort of album where I feel like in my very limited capacity on the drums, and I know that'll probably make you laugh because I know you've coached me through some terrible days.
You can play. You can play.
I can play 4 bars and then stop.
You've released playing of yourself on tracks, I believe.
Yeah, I have, absolutely. But only because you broke your arm. It was necessity, mate, you know.
Yeah.
But I've, in my limited capacity of that, in the times I've had drum kits set up in places where I feel like I could just like plug in an iPod at the time and have a bit of a play along.
Yep.
It is an album that you can play simply along to,
and
you feel like you're getting more out of it because of the complexity of everything else,
if
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it was clearly an album that was in your musical vocabulary.
Yeah.
Had you covered any Maroon 5 songs in any of the bands that you'd been in? Because by that point, by 2009, surely you're starting to tour a bit. You're starting to play around, aren't you?
Yeah. So I think we'd done various versions of This Love in different bands in college for certain stuff, but nothing proper. I remember playing it a few times.
Yeah.
But I think most of it was back in those days when I was practicing, I'd mainly be playing along to stuff.
Yeah.
But I'd just stick an album on from start to finish and try and play the lot.
100%.
And I think Songs About Jane was one of those.
Yep.
What was the McFly album called? Was it Room on the Third Floor, or was that the single? The one that Room on the Third Floor was on.
Oh, I don't know, actually. I know Motion in the Ocean. That's my favourite McFly album.
I think that was 1 or 2 after this one. So
and that's the one with Stargirl on it and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think it was their debut. I used to put that on because that had quite a lot of real feel drumming on it to play.
Yeah,
So it was always those kind of songs. And then the Keane album with Bed Shaped on it.
Hopes and Fears?
Hopes and Fears, yeah. That was one. So those 3 albums I used to kind of just jam round and round, along with Amy Winehouse as well.
Oh, okay.
Her album, that was the Back to Black album. That was on there. But it always tended to be those kind of songs that I'd be playing along to.
And that's interesting to me because I think those 4 albums, even though they could be seen as being quite different, they do push the boundaries of pop, don't they?
Yeah.
So Amy Winehouse really heavily draws on that soul and jazz influence, and I think Songs About Jane is quite similar, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think at the time as well, playing for the jazz orchestra or going through that, it always felt like it went hand in hand.
Yeah.
So I'd be practicing that and it'd be enjoyable, but it was also helping me in the big band setting with the feel of stuff, especially the Amy Winehouse stuff, because there's a fair bit of swing and stuff on there.
Yeah.
But Songs About Jane, for example, and I know we're going to talk about the songs in a bit more detail, but Sunday Morning, if you listen to that intro drum beat, that's the one thing off that album that strikes me straight away when someone says it. I'm like, that is the beat.
Yeah.
And it's so simple. It's just those 2 push kicks at the beginning, but they are so hard to get consistent for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Really hard. So I used to just slave along to that, and if there was 1 or 2 bass drums, I'd start the song again and try and get it really, really tight.
Yeah, and it's really interesting you say that as well, because the chords at the beginning of Sunday Morning as well, it's one of those songs where when I try to do quick covers, try to do like 60-second things for like Instagram and stuff like that, I'll sit down and go, I can play that, I can do that. And I've got a list on my iPhone in notes of just things to try on certain days.
Yeah.
Depending on how I'm feeling, what the weather's doing, what my voice is doing.
Yeah.
And I have tried Sunday Morning at least 6 times in the last 2 years, and I just can't quite get it to work in the way that I think it's going to work. And I think in my head, I think it's simpler than it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it requires a lot more sort of, I don't want to say technical ability, but because obviously that is true, but it requires a little bit more concentration, a little bit more feel.
Yeah, I think that's the grey area, the feel of the album, which I think is why it's appealing to us both so much, because it's relatively simple stuff played really well, like convicted really well. So if you could give that Sunday Morning beat, and possibly those chords, I'm obviously not so versed on pitched instruments, so I don't know, but for the beat, you could give that to 10 different drummers and they'd all sound completely different.
Yes.
So to try and emulate it is a challenge. To try and get it to sit on top of that is a challenge. And I guess it is the same for the chords as well, and the way that he's playing them and what's there.
100%. And there's something clearly about the band and the way they play on that record that it's one of these things. It's an album to me that slipped through the cracks in 2002. It's like I can't really think of many other albums at that time that were doing, because I was looking at where it charted, and it was number 1 in the UK album charts. It was number 1 in the Australian charts. I think it was number 1 in the American charts.
So all the big hitters then.
And it's a debut album as well.
Yeah, and they kind of came from nowhere with it. I know, obviously, that is what a debut is. Yeah. But they kind of just appeared from absolutely nowhere.
That's amazing. Their first album.
The first album just came out of nowhere.
And it's funny you should say that, actually, because I was having a bit of a look at this, and they were actually a band before called Cara's Flowers.
Right.
And I didn't know this.
No,
and
neither
it's
did I.
everyone apart from a certain member of the band, which is another question for you, right?
Oh, dear.
Can you name any members of Maroon 5 that aren't Adam Levine?
No, just Adam Levine.
Interesting. And there's one person who I can, and it's James Valentine, and that's guitarist.
Right, okay.
And the reason why, and it's really obscure this, is because I remember when YouTube first became a thing.
Yeah.
And it must have been clearly around 2000. Oh, God, when was it? When did YouTube become a thing? I can remember by sixth form, you could hit the space bar to pause it.
Yeah.
Right? So it got to that point.
Earlier than you'd think, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Maybe when we were, year 7, 8?
Yeah,
maybe
around that sort of time.
That it was first coming out, possibly.
Because James Valentine put onto YouTube tutorials on how to play his songs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is quite unusual, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It was for that time for a big band as well. Like.
Absolutely. So I feel like I've watched somewhere a video of him saying, "This is how we play She Will Be Loved."
Right, yeah.
And it's like, here's how to do the finger picking pattern on this.
Yeah.
And same with This Love. And
Do you know what? That's made me feel terrible because I've spent literally over half my life trying to emulate these parts, or nearly half my life trying to emulate these parts. I don't know what the drummer's called. So I've been playing them for and I really admire the playing on it.
And that is interesting because and again, I saw this earlier. Again, I have cheated, like I said to you. I had
good.
listened to this and I had a little bit of a look. But the drummer on this album, who is, let me find his name. His name is Ryan Dusick, right?
Right.
And he left Maroon 5 after this album.
Did he?
Yes, he did, apparently. So I'm sure I read.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think they do kind of change after this, right?
Yeah, because the drumming was completely unique on that album.
Yes,
and everything after, not that it's not good, they've had some great music after,
absolutely,
but it's a completely different...
It's a different vibe, right?
Yeah, completely different feel.
So it says, this is their only album to feature the original drummer, Ryan Dusick. There we go.
Well, he nailed it. Good old Ryan.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, be interesting to see what he went on to do. Because I think the drumming is the kind of the centre point of this album for me as well. I think it's something that holds us together, right?
And I think that is where some of the appeal came from for me. That the whole album is held together by some really creative drum parts. And not to say that some of the other stuff on there isn't, but it's really cohesive, and yet every drum part's so different at the same time.
Yes.
And there's a lot of different sounds in there.
Yeah.
On the recording, snare sounds and percussion sounds that just make it sound really, it flows really well.
Absolutely. So let's make this easier in terms of the track listing. I'm not trying to make you guess everything.
No, okay.
But we've already talked about 3 of the songs on this that were singles.
So is that She Will Be Loved,
Yeah.
This Love,
Yeah.
and Sunday Morning?
Yes.
Okay.
Another single? Think you can name another single?
Oh. Can I look at the track listing?
You can. In fact, it's the first track on the album, so you get it straight away. Harder to Breathe.
Yeah, what a tune as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was the first single they released.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think that was one of the bigger releases. Not over here.
No.
So maybe in America.
Absolutely not. I'm just going to check that as well. It says the song peaked at number 6. It also appeared on the Alternative Songs chart at number 31.
Okay.
And the Billboard Hot 100 at number 18.
Right.
Internationally, the single chart at number 13 in the United Kingdom. But I'm pretty sure This Love...
This Love will have been top 5.
Yeah, okay. So the song entered the top 10 on most charts, topping several of Billboard magazine's component charts, including reaching number 1 spot for the Hot Adult Top 40 Tracks chart.
Oh, that one.
Absolutely, that we all know so well. The music video... Hang on, what did it say? The live version of the song won Best Pop Performance by a duo group with vocals at the 2006 Grammy Awards. So, yeah, that's where things start to pick up.
Yep.
But Harder to Breathe is a great song. But I always thought that This Love was the first single on it.
Yeah, I would have done as well. Harder to Breathe, I always thought was an album track. I didn't realise.
Yeah.
That's made it... That's strange.
It's a good album opener, right?
Yeah, it is. That heavy snare roll that you get.
Which is great. What a great way to start an album. It's riffy, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Very, very riffy for a song like that, and very sort of like Adam Levine uses all of his voice on that track.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very, very high stuff, isn't there?
I really love the bits in the chorus where it says Harder to Breathe and you've just got them bar of drum breaks in the middle. I love that.
I think that's a production technique that, and it's the same with the opening of This Love, where you kind of go, right, bung a radio effect on that and then cut it out and cut it back in kind of thing. I think that's something that we've definitely taken into stuff.
I did that on the last Ginger Tom single.
Did you? What was the last Ginger Tom single?
Don't Know Me At All. And if you listen to it,
yeah,
essentially, This Love in structure.
Interesting.
It starts with that.
So it continues to influence us even now. I like that.
And I'd not thought about that until you've just said it. I thought, oh no, I've been had.
That's it, absolutely. You've heard it here first, everyone. Alex Byard-Cooke, plagiarist.
That's it. But the album at the time never seemed formulated, the Maroon 5 one, and now I'm using it in my formula. So,
and that's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think a lot of this is going to be subconscious. I think about songs on this album, like so we've got Hard to Breathe that comes in first. Very, very riffy song to start.
Yeah, quite a heavy track for the album as well.
Absolutely, because there are some softer moments in it. Like I think it kind of the softest point on it is probably "She Will Be Loved."
Yeah,
even though it's like there's points where it's bigger in the production than the chorus.
"She Will Be Loved" is almost ballad-esque, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, funnily enough, I actually think I played "She Will Be Loved" at my own prom.
Did you?
Yeah. So I think there's a bit of a theme here, actually.
We've done a few proms.
Absolutely, yeah. We've played. In fact, that's 3 at least.
Yep.
3 proms. Wow, that's quite something, isn't it? And Maroon 5 seems to be the theme with them. I don't know whether we played it at Lizzie's prom, though. I don't know whether we played any Maroon 5 stuff then.
No.
And also, the thing about that kind of set list is I don't know whether we'd have actually just written it on paper at that time. I'm not suggesting that the gig occurred in the 1970s, but I feel like it predates our iPhone Note, Google Doc kind of
we
era.
might have had it on a whiteboard.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I feel like that set list might be lost in time. I just know that we definitely played Stargirl. We've already talked about that track today. But we played that. And I think we played a couple of ABBA numbers as well.
We did.
And also we played Taylor Swift. We'll never be getting back together.
We played a similar set list in your parents' garden.
Yes.
Not long after as well.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like we've done a lot of stuff like that. We've done. Yeah. We played the Golden Jubilee as well.
Yeah.
Not the Golden Jubilee. No, it would have been like 8. The
was it Diamond?
Yes, Golden, Diamond, Platinum.
We've just had Platinum, haven't we?
Yes, we have. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it was that one. Yes.
We've played under a few gazebos in our time, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. On hot days.
Tickhill springs to mind.
Absolutely, 100%. Oh, what a day that was.
Yes.
To be fair, it's interesting because I feel like that gig when we were doing all that kind of stuff, we were playing around with the jazz stuff with Johnny and Joe. No, we don't want to do it with Joe because we do it with you.
There was a crossover, wasn't there? We'd do bits and bobs, and
with
Joe was away for a lot of it, wasn't he? So it was kind of a natural progression for me to just come in and
absolutely
take the seat.
And some of these songs wouldn't have gone out of place in the set list we're playing. I know we're playing stuff like, Cantaloupe Island.
The Chicken.
Watermelon
Man.
You name it, we played it. And I feel like some of these songs would have definitely fit in with this, right?
Yeah, they would. I wish we'd have kind of done them at the time now. Because I think we might have done. Yeah. We might well have played them. I can't remember.
But I think this is the thing that maybe this will come out in the sense that we'll as we talk about this more. But to me, it's like it makes sense if we try to justify it in a rational way why we did that, why we arrived at that cover of This Love.
Yeah.
But we've never really made any music like this.
No.
Ever.
No.
We've been influenced by it ourselves, and it obviously started our production journey together we've at least done something, maybe apart from the pandemic, every year since then.
Yeah. I think if you did it on a track by track basis, we've released at least a track a year, if you had to split it down.
Absolutely. I mean, if you were to take that as well, you'd probably think that, sorry, I'm just, for everyone at home, I know this is not a visual thing, I'm pointing at the cover of Here of All Places, the album that Alex and I made with the usual ones.
I've just realised I'm on your living room wall.
Absolutely, mate. Privilege, pride of place.
Day made.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, I've just, look, there we go, straighten that up a little bit. But yeah, so with that album in particular, I mean, there's 13 tracks on that.
Yep.
It was 12 years ago that we did This Love, so we're covered in that sense, even by averages, right?
Yep.
But I think we have made something at least every year.
Here we go then. So, on that album, I'm going to show you, I've just twigged it now. There's a direct influence there straight away in one of the drum patterns.
Oh.
The song with the paradiddle on the drums.
Yes.
That's like the Harder to Breathe groove in those breaks. But it's played on a hi-hat.
She can handle the attention. Can you remember the names of his own songs? Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So again, it does creep into our playing.
It does. So that's interesting because there's maybe some moments on that record that are probably closer to this than other things. But I wonder whether we decided to cover this song because we'd both covered it in different contexts, and we thought it was a good thing to go into the studio with that we knew that we could play.
Yeah, we probably both knew it.
Yeah.
And both thought, let's give it a go.
Let's try this. Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been how it, because I didn't learn it. I already knew it.
Yeah.
We didn't learn it on that day, did we? We went in and kind of just played it.
Yeah,
it down.
and I might have had to Google the chords a bit.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I still think we were done in like an afternoon though. I don't think.
Yeah, it didn't take us very long, unless it was the kind of phase where we were using all the, what they call it, gear, wasn't it? The pre-Sonar stuff.
Yes.
That would sometimes work really well.
Yeah.
And sometimes...
Was that day?
I don't know,
Or was
actually.
that the section? It was one day.
One of those 2 days was the day we had a nightmare with it.
Yes. Yeah. We couldn't get the interfaces to daisy chain. Yeah, just work in general.
Just work at all.
Yeah.
Then we kind of switched it off, went and got something from Coupland's.
Yep.
And then came back and it was working fine for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
But we still got this out of it.
We did.
Yes, absolutely. So, do you think... Have you listened to this cover recently?
I listened to it the day that we decided we were going to do this podcast about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did as well.
Yep.
Have we gotten worse at production since then? Because I feel like that's
It
actually
sounds
a really
mint, doesn't
good
it?
mix. Yeah.
We seem to have some of those. I don't know whether it was luck or whatever, but we seemed to go into the studio and we record something and it just sounded nice.
Yeah.
Which
I think at that point we hit onto a rich theme of getting things right in a really simple way.
yes.
And I wonder whether as we started to, and this is a bit of a deep dive into the sort of emotional side of music, I wonder whether what we did recently with Mondays and actually going in and playing something together
Yeah.
was more like what we did then.
Yeah.
And actually what we did with Here of All Places and some of the other stuff we've made between, maybe overcomplicating it a bit.
Yeah, possibly.
And I don't mean that in a negative way.
Yeah, maybe we were trying too hard in certain instances, maybe to get a sound between us.
Yeah.
Where in reality, before we know we've just thrown mics at things, we're sensible enough to know where it works.
Yeah.
You turn the gain up, it's not clipping, and it's all there for you.
Absolutely.
However, I get why we've done it, because when you've got a release that's coming up that you really want to take pride in, then you're going to spend that extra time. Like with Here of All Places, we might have gone into it and almost over-engineered it when we was recording the kit, but at the same time, it worked out well.
Yeah.
Because then we had more than what we needed.
Oh,
So-
absolutely. I think we're like 16 tracks on the drums or something ridiculous like that.
And we set that and then left it set up as was for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it might have been even like a month of just going back in, because it felt like, I think we might have done 4 tracks one week.
Yep.
And then in certain instances, we might have gone back and done 2 of those 4 at the start.
Yeah.
And I think it was like an overlap. I know I'm doing that with my hands, but it was like a 4, then 2, then 2, then 4, etc.
Yeah, I remember it being set up that way for a long while, and I left it like that after we'd finished as well.
Absolutely. And we were consistent with that as well. I think we might have missed 1 week, but I think we actually went in every week and came back to it.
Yeah.
And it was fresh. And what we got out of it was good. And I think the drum sound is really good on that album. And I think what you play is really good on that album as well.
Right, I think that's the first time we've spent so much time thinking about parts.
Yeah.
And how they're going to work with the rest of it. Sometimes we'll go in, say if you've got a demo or I've written something, and I'll play it down, and then 6 months later I'll hear it and I think, I'd have done that differently, or I'd have done that differently, I'd have played that differently. Whereas that one, I feel like from start to finish, the whole process, we dialed in exactly what we wanted at each point.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting as well, because I feel like I asked that question in the last podcast when I was talking about Mondays and I was breaking the mix down a little bit. I think we started at 10 in the morning and we were done by about 4.
Yeah.
And we got that whole track down, and we thought about the parts on that day. We thought about the production, and I know that we're heavily leaning on the stuff that we've done before. We know that certain mic placements work. We know that certain things work. So there was a point where we tried halftime in the chorus, right? And we knew, right, actually that's not going to work, and we binned it off in like 8 seconds or what have you.
Got to give it a go though, haven't you?
Absolutely. But, and I'll ask you this question because I know what my answer to this is. When it comes to our cover of This Love, when it comes to Here of All Places, when it comes to Mondays, are you any happier with any of those than the others?
I'm happy with all of them.
Yeah.
I think Here of All Places is my favourite body of work that we've done.
Yeah.
Followed closely by Wasting a Summer. I don't know if that's just subconsciously because of the volume of them. They're an actual album rather than being just a couple of songs.
Yeah.
Or if they're playing, I'm happy with my playing on them. Sometimes, and I think it's just been hypercritical, which all musicians can be to themselves, aren't they?
Yeah.
Sometimes I listen to things, but even with the Ginger Tom stuff, I listen back, I go, I would have done that differently, would have done that differently.
Yeah.
And then, if I don't listen to that track for like 6 months and it comes on again, I'm like, oh, actually, that's all right, that. Depends what mood you're in when you listen to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, I don't know if you ever had this is a bit weird and slightly off topic, but if you're in a certain mood, a song will sound slower. But if you've got loads of adrenaline, a song will sound faster.
Interesting. There is a thing about this, and someone explained this to me once, and I can't remember what the explanation is, but apparently there is a reason why that is.
Right, okay.
And that's why, particularly as musicians, we can feel quite disorientated when that happens because things feel slower and we feel like everything's going wrong. But it's all to do with the way that your brain perceives certain sounds and things like that.
And I guess that's linked to people playing faster live because they've got the adrenaline and they think it's the slower tempo.
Yes, and also it's the kind of thing as well where if you play with tracks live,
yeah,
you always, even though it's the same tempo, you might think, why is this so slow?
I've had that. When I was with the function band twice nightly and we were doing sort of butlins and corporate work and that kind of thing.
Yes.
Everything was metronome, so I was the only one in the band that had a metronome.
Okay.
And then synths, keyboards, backing vocals would go out front, anything that we couldn't play live because we were just 4-piece, so singing, guitar, bass, drums, and then quite heavy on the track.
On the track stuff, yeah.
So I was keeping everyone in time. Oh. And if we fiddled about with the set list and we opened for ages with Candy by Robbie Williams as the set opener, quite mid-tempo sort of funky thing.
Yeah.
We changed to Living La Vida Loca by Ricky Martin.
Ah, okay.
And then straight after that we would go into... There was another song. And when you come out of Candy, you'd play it and you'd be at the right tempo. When we come out of Living La Vida Loca and went into it, I always felt like it was really, really slow. And I felt struggling to put a consistent time down. I felt like I was running through treacle. It was really weird.
That's really interesting. That's an interesting manifestation of that, isn't it? And I think I totally get what you're saying about looking back on work in that way. And I think, I don't know whether it's just me at the moment and being obsessed with this simplicity and going back to going, right, if we can go into the studio in 2010 with less knowledge, less equipment, an understanding of a track, because we've both played it, and come out with something where in that mix you can hear everything. I know that mixing's very subjective.
Yeah, some people love it, some people hate it, depending on who you find.
Absolutely. But if you were to think about it from an objective point of view, i.e., can you hear every part that is being played?
Is there clarity to each element?
Yeah, and that's your first kind of question, isn't it? Obviously, in time and in tune is another one.
Yeah.
And I would argue that maybe there are some points where we're not as tight with each other as we could be.
Yeah, or bands we've recorded that aren't as tight as they could be, and you can really struggle to mix that then.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like in this particular instance that actually the mix is fine. And that you can hear everything. There's like there's a piano part, there's an electric piano part, there is an organ part in places, there's some backing vocals, there's bass, there's electric guitar, and there's drums.
And I seem to think that when it hits after the initial filter sweep intro section, it comes in, it's nice and full. Everything's there.
Absolutely. It might be one of those things where maybe if you were being really critical, that it might be a little bit quiet overall. We might not have limited it or mastered it right.
We probably weren't into the loudness wars back then, were we?
No.
We probably weren't actually mastering things pretty much at all.
We'd have just been, like we were talking about earlier, we've been playing it safe in terms of how hot
mix it down, literally put a compressor or a limiter.
Don't let it clip. Yeah. Just don't let it clip at all. No idea what was going on there.
Yeah, I think that predates us really knowing how to set a master bus with compression, with EQ.
Yeah, and then I think we went a bit heavy on that with Wasting a Summer.
And almost over-compressed.
Yeah, I think there was like the point where like 90 different buses going out of things.
But I think when you think of the age that we were when we were doing this,
I
know I was studying it at college, but you weren't getting taught really in-depth band recording at that stage. I think we did well. And you go through that phase, don't you, where, especially when we were younger, it's not so much now because the recording gear is all smaller and more readily available.
Yes.
But we were in that crossover stage where you had to have decent money to have a home studio, or you went to a massive studio with racks of outboard and a big mixing desk. And I think we built our gear slowly, and as we got more and more gear, we always kind of thought, you've got to use it all, because we'd see these big studios. We think, he's running that through that compressor and this through that.
Yeah.
And that might be where the overcomplication came in. We were trying to get too many pieces of gear used.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's...
No, I think you're right. And I did a lot of reading before we did Here of All Places. And I had a book that one of my friends had given me. My friend Seb gave me a book on drum recording. And it was all about the kind of stuff like where when you put a microphone closer to the edge of a drum, you're going to get more of a tone sound. And when you're in the middle, it's going to be more of the sort of attack.
Yeah.
And we were kind of having those conversations and going, oh, well, why don't we record the tone element of it, but then use like a transient shaper to get more attack out of it.
Yeah.
But then you kind of realise that you can't always make those choices.
Yeah, and sometimes you're trying to get, rather than one sound out of a snare, you're trying to pull 4 sounds out of it. And that's not how they work. It's one instrument. And I think we've been guilty of that. I want the crack, I want the ring, I want the body, I want the snare wires. You're like, oh, all right, do you want the track just to be snare? Or?
Exactly. And then you put the vocals in, it all goes anyway.
Yeah.
And I think there was we just weren't thinking like that in 2010.
No. We probably didn't have the mics. Because, like, for example, Here of All Places, where it's 3 mics on the snare and 2 mics on each tom and whatever.
Yeah.
Back then, we had the mics that were available to us, and it was probably sometimes a case of stick that one microphone in between those 2 toms so that it picks them both up, because we don't have another mic, or we don't have another cable, or we haven't got another stand.
Yeah.
And that might be why it turned out as it did, because we had to make good with what we had, I guess.
Yeah,
Not that we were hard done to, like, we were begging and stealing for mics, but you'll know, as we've gone through the years, our equipment's built up. We'll buy
absolutely.
a piece here and there.
That naturally happens, right? And I think there's even a phase where on Wasting a Summer, I think some of those drum tracks are like 6 channels.
Yeah.
And I think from what I remember, when we were trying to get it all together, you were out with possibly twice nightly at the time.
Yeah.
And I seem to remember you were like, all my gear's packed up to go in the van.
That'll have been with a vote.
With a vote, yeah. We're like, right, we've got an hour to do this drum track. I can't really get the microphones out of the thing because I ain't got time. These are the 6 that we've got. Yeah,
well, most of my gear would have been in Sheffield at that point, in a van.
Exactly. And you go, right, okay, well, let's do with what we've got here then.
I think that was done with, off the top of my head, that track will have been recorded with a PG52 on the bass drum.
Yeah.
A 57 on the snare.
Yeah.
C2s as overheads.
Yeah.
And then clip-on Stag Tom mics.
I was going to say the Stag Tom mics. I remember them.
I still use 2 of them.
Really?
One's for talkback, granted. But
it's that one, is it? Oh, I thought I recognised that.
I still use one on a kick. And to be fair, they're all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's we've talked about this before with the C2s, arguably the most versatile and best microphone in the world.
Yeah, I mean, unless
£25 for a pair.
Unless you're in a room like Abbey Road or Air Studios and you've got a really, really nice sounding space to start with.
Yeah.
I actually think they cut out a lot of the rubbish that you're going to try and get rid of if you've got more expensive mics, because they're almost too clear.
Yeah.
They're almost like mix ready overheads.
Yeah, absolutely.
At £35 a pair.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, I got mine on eBay for $25.
Yeah, and we have dabbled with the C4, which is supposed to be
a step up, right?
Yeah, but harsh.
Yeah, and weird with the mid, something strange going on there, isn't there?
All these producer people that slammed Behringer for years and years, they actually make good things.
Yeah, have we made a record without a C2 on it? Probably not.
And I know a lot of my friends and colleagues that I'd really respect in the industry won't mix on anything that's not an X32 now. They're all mixing on Behringers.
Interesting.
And people used to say, "Oh, you've got Behringer."
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, how the times have changed.
Yep.
This is it.
Yeah.
It's the same when people talk about Epiphone guitars like that, don't they?
Yeah.
It's like if it's not a Gibson, it's just like I love my Epiphones. I think they're fantastic.
And Squires.
Absolutely.
People slam Squires.
Got 2 Harley Benton guitars now at the moment. Strat and a Telly. Absolutely love them.
Yeah.
The Tom Ann ones, their entry level ones. Absolutely fantastic. In fact, Mondays is recorded on that pink Harley Benton.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You wouldn't know that wasn't a Fender.
This is the thing. I think maybe back in the day when these imitations or cheaper lines were first coming out, they were probably substandard.
Yeah.
But now the parts that they get for what would have been a great guitar back in the day are probably cheaper. You can put the same guitar together for
I agree.
half the price.
So do you think then, with what we've said about Songs About Jane, do you think...
That's what we were talking about.
Oh, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, of course. Do you think that because of what we were doing at the time, I know we talked about Here of All Places and experimentation. We talked a little bit how maybe we weren't experimenting as much with Mondays. Maybe we just went in and we had that time and we used our experimentation expertise.
I think that nowadays, because we're so busy in our schedule, is sometimes the way we have to go with it.
Absolutely. Do you think that in the way that we were experimenting with This Love, i.e. can we track a song and make it sound good, do you think Songs About Jane is a good album to play around with we've already said as a musician, but do we think it was a good one to play around with as a producer as well?
Yeah, because I think it was produced, and we've had this discussion before. Sometimes we've said, oh, the drums might be quiet in places, or oh, they're overpowering other places. But I think on the whole, that record sounds nice to listen to.
Yeah, okay, I agree with that.
If you're aiming to then recreate that or make something that sounds better than that, you've kind of got to go to their framework.
Yeah.
Which, I'm not going to say it pigeonholes you into a box, but it gives you some guidelines that you're then trying to follow. Because we were kind of trying to do a like-for-like cover. It wasn't like some live lounge mashup. No. It was, we're going to play the song as is, mix it to sound like a band playing the song.
Yeah.
So I think we had something to try and copy and go towards. And I think the only reason we would have got together and done that is because we liked the sound of it to begin with. We were trying to achieve a sound like they had.
So do you think that in that sense that really our criteria when we probably messaged each other at that time was, let's get in the studio and do something together?
Yeah.
And that it was as simple as that.
Yeah.
Right?
And we'll have probably turned up and you'll have either said, do you know this love? Or maybe we talked about 2 or 3 songs, but it will have been quite organic. I can't remember a time we've ever gone into the studio and been looking at each other for ideas.
I agree. I think that's what we're good at, bouncing off each other like that, I think. And I think that's interesting because we clearly went in and went, let's just do something.
Yeah.
Let's just make some music.
I can't even remember. Did we? I seem to think we tracked bass and drums together.
Yes. And I wonder which bass I played that on. I wonder whether I played that on your Stag special. Remember the black guitar, the black bass guitar?
Yeah. I think you might have done.
Yeah. I think that was probably the only bass guitar we had between us at the time.
I know,
right?
there's perpetually, just for 15 years, been a bass knocking around at my house. Whether it's Brody's or whose, there's always just been a bass.
Just there. Have you got one now?
Yeah, I've got Brody's Squire. In fact,
I've got butterscotch one.
Yeah, that's at the studio, and his Fender is in my garage. Because we were on a stag do a few months ago, and we took the instruments up so we could do a rockioke. I took my electric kit and the bass and everything,
nice.
And we're all just smashed singing our favourite metal songs in the middle of the York countryside.
That's nice.
But I've got 2 basses at the minute.
2 basses at the moment.
So we should probably track something.
Absolutely perfect. You're saying, because that's the sort of, I think we've done. That's quite unusual because I think if we'd have done bass and drums at the same time at that time, I wouldn't have thought I was a confident bass player at that time.
We definitely did Sex on Fire bass and drums. Because you were stood face to face with me, and you know the end, the da 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 da.
Yeah.
I just remember you playing the bass and nodding your head as if that was the end.
Really?
Yeah, I can remember that vividly.
Oh,
really
no way.
vividly.
I'm glad you've got a good memory, and I've got a good memory about it as well. But I feel like between us, we've probably got every concept of this between us, right?
Yeah, because if you remember on Sex on Fire, we recorded the bass and the drums.
Yeah.
Got it nailed. We were really happy. And then realised that we had to time in that guitar intro at the beginning.
Oh no! I couldn't play that to you now.
No, I couldn't come. I've played Sex on Fire probably, and this isn't even an exaggeration, I would say, between 600 and 1,000 times, maybe more in my life. Every function band has done it. I've done it with you. I've played it loads of times.
Yeah.
I still struggle with that intro. And you get guitar, like the Twice Nightly click was a simplified click, so he changed the riff, so it came in sort of easier.
Yeah.
Every other guitarist, if you're playing it at a gig, I'll come in where I know it to be, and they look round at you like you've just ruined the day.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm in the right place, I promise. You're playing it wrong.
Just need to play it off the beat. And you know what, I'm going to probably have to sit with my guitar later and actually try and play that now. But yeah, that I fully remember and believe, and just being like, why can't I get this right?
Because we're both the bass and the drums in the right time, and then we were trying to set the click 4 bars before, and a struggle.
And I can imagine it being a struggle, and I think we were probably thinking at that time about the musical elements. We weren't like, oh, hang on, if you're going to play the intro on Sex on Fire, then let's make sure this 58's near the centre of the cone for maximum attack.
No, we'll have probably had it looped round the handle of the amplifier and dangling down on a cable to mark it up, maybe the E906 or something like that.
Absolutely. And our criteria at that time would have been like, you put a microphone in and go, well, yeah, it's picking up the snare.
Yeah.
That would have been it.
We dangled overheads over the garage door runners at one bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were just dangling down.
Before you put the ceiling in and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And that mentality, I wonder whether it's just like a nostalgia thing. But I look back at that time really fondly.
Yeah, me too. It seemed to be like endless summer holidays, where we would be together a lot, and you'd be locked away in that studio, and you'd come out in the blistering sunshine and paddling pools and all that kind of stuff.
I'm absolutely certain we've recorded together on Christmas Eve before, you know.
We did. What was it? Oh, what was it?
In fact, I think we've done it a few times. I think we've done it with Otter's Pocket. I think we did with the Christmas single.
Yeah, we've done one of the... No, what we did, one song, I don't think it was a Christmas song, that we recorded on Christmas Eve and released, and I can't remember which song it was. Because we always did the Christmas stuff, like in December and the lead up. Yeah. That was always a bit before. I can't remember what song it was. I vividly remember that.
I think we did we did a video on photo booth, me, you and Jonna. On Christmas Eve, and we were like, "Merry Christmas from us."
Yeah,
I just can't remember what it is. But I'm sure we've recorded on key holidays.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, we did. We always tend to find the good ones. Christmas Eve,
absolutely.
Easter.
Yeah, get an Easter track out. It's where the prime market is. I think we've like you say, those summers and rehearsing in that room. So many things have happened in that studio in terms of rehearsals, in terms of things we've recorded.
I spent a lot of time in there. I would love to know how many hours I've actually spent in the garage of my mum and dad's house.
Yeah.
Which is now a studio of sorts.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'd be really interesting to see if there's it's really bad this, but you said, and when we recorded Wasted a Summer, and suddenly I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing that we did.
Yeah, yeah. And that was an album that my part was done in a day, 2 days.
Yeah.
I literally just played it all there and then it was...
Yeah.
I can't even remember how I learnt the songs. We just kind of went through it, didn't we? It
started with the first two, didn't it? It started with Don't Let Them Stop You Dancing, which we actually played in the room together.
Yes, and did we do the same with Mr. Carter's Posh
Excursions? The following week, and I remember it being a really rainy, miserable day.
Yeah.
And we played it in the room together.
Yeah.
And I just can't think of any things, apart from jams and stuff like that we've done, where we haven't really done that.
Yeah.
Particularly with the three of us. I would have loved to have done that with the usual ones.
Because the structure of Posh Excursions, you can kind of hear it round the solo-y section. None of us know where we're going or what we're doing.
Absolutely not.
But it doesn't sound that way, but I know when I listen to it that we're...
And we didn't write anything down.
Yeah, we won't have done. I can't remember tracking the rest of that album.
No.
I really can't remember.
I know Jonna was going to Dusseldorf.
Yes.
And I know that we went to Pizza Hut on the day that it came out.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And we were like, let's have a little album celebration launch thing. But Jonna wasn't there because
was it just me and you?
Yeah. I was like, let's go and do this. And I'm like, oh, what a great thing we've done there. And I went back to uni after that.
Yeah, you did. Which is why we had to do things in summer, because we were all studying or working in different places, weren't we?
And we had a deadline. I just remember that was our deadline, and I got all of Jonna's stuff done before. I'm always putting John under pressure because we recorded all the bass in one day for Here of All Places.
Yes, that was in London.
Yes, absolutely. It was when he was living in Walthamstow, I think.
Yeah.
And there's a great picture I've got. It's a blurred picture of him when he's finished recording Here of All Places, and he's got his Fender bass in his hand, and he's about to throw it down the sofa because he's just dead.
Just dead with it.
And I think I bless him. I turned up and I was like, "Let's do this." And I didn't think he realised that we were going to be tracking 13 tracks in, 16 hours.
Yeah.
And he'd not heard any of these things before.
Oh no.
And that was a nightmare.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Nightmare.
Nailed it though, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely great playing, and you just to me you wouldn't know that he'd. Done that. I'm not saying that he had put a tremendous amount of effort in. You can hear that he's put effort in.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't know that he'd come into those things fresh.
Yeah. Which is always the beauty of what he does, really.
Oh, 100%, absolutely. And I think with Wasted a Summer, I'm sure we had more time together on it after he'd gone.
Yeah,
I think we were mixing it and stuff.
I feel like we were around possibly at your mum and dad's.
Yes.
Up in the room doing bits and bobs.
Yes, I think you're right, absolutely. I think that space as well, I feel like we'll have been mixing in there.
Yeah, like tracks like Petty for Lou and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure I remember either getting early mixes from you or being with you while we were doing extra bits to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, I've still got the stems for that album somewhere on a hard drive. Yeah, absolutely. And I always come back to, whenever I go to mix it again, I always go to Don't Let Them Stop You Dancing. I always go to that as a thing. And I'm sure I've sent you over the years like different things where I've put it back in.
Yeah, various mixes and revisions.
Yeah, exactly. And I listened to Wasted a Summer in the car a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, even though I remix it, the energy of this and the way that we did it at the time, again, we probably weren't thinking about production then.
No, possibly not.
Probably thinking about mixing.
Yeah.
But we weren't tracking in a clever way, I don't think.
No.
It was like, can we make an album? Let's try it.
Yeah.
That
How
was our
hard
criteria.
can it be?
Yeah.
That is the first album that I ever helped make, so.
Yeah.
There we go.
And me too. I think it's the first time where I thought, well, let's make an album.
Yeah. I'm still gutted that Here I Am never ended up on it, and that we can't find that anywhere.
Interesting, because that was actually part of a concept album that I was writing. So that was after that.
Was it really?
Oh no, it was before that.
I'm sure that predates that.
It was before that, and it was a softer track on a prog album.
Yes, because I remember I put some drums on that for you.
Yes.
And I really love that track. And now we can't find it anywhere, can we?
Yeah. Interesting, because that
had some nice built harmonies on the vocals and
yeah, and that's the thing. I think by that point, I think I was starting to think about making music more complicated,
but not production.
Not production.
So much. Yeah.
No, I think the acoustic guitar on that was recorded with a 57, just pointed
somewhere near
it. But then you listen to the acoustic guitar sound on it; it's actually quite good.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm like, well, it must be exactly 12 inches from the sound hole. It must point here. Do not point off axis. You will affect the frequency response. And my brain
phase.
If there's a point, actually, I was listening back to the stems of Mondays in the last podcast. There's a point in the room microphones where there's a bit of phasing going on.
Just in one section.
Yeah. And I was a bit like, how did we miss that? Unless it's something that I've done with an effect afterwards and I've messed it up, which is probably quite likely.
Did you look at the waveforms? Could just drag them in.
I did, and that's the thing. I thought I'd synced them up.
Phase is a problem that people worry about too much, in my opinion.
And that is exactly what I was going to say. We did not think about that when we were making this love. And I think personally, I'm just as happy with that track as I am with Mondays, as I am with Here of All Places.
Does that make you happy that you were enjoying it and getting good results back then, or does it make you sad that there's not masses of because there is difference? But do you know what I'm trying to say?
I think. To me, it's about a mentality shift.
Yeah.
I think it's about the fact that really the thing that I yearn for is spending time in the studio with you.
Yeah.
More than anything else. It's just that we've been technical, we've been in and we've gone in and we've done stuff that has just been about, well, what can we do today?
Yeah.
And I think that attitude, even though it was someone else's song, even though it was a cover of a Maroon 5 song, that attitude is the right thing to take into a studio.
Yeah.
Here's this thing I've written. Shall we have a go at this today? Yes.
Yeah, and that's the way I like it to happen like that.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I love like thinking about it and putting loads of mics on a kit and sound checking it and getting it right and thinking this is right. But I don't know if it's just you get more efficient at that side of it anyway as you go along. Like I can mic up a kit now and I know it's going to sound good in 15, 20 minutes, whereas before I'd be thinking about it more. But because we've done it so much, we know what's going to work, we know what's not.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps speed up the process, but now it does seem a lot more natural to just go in and we'll be able to do it regardless.
And I think it took us about 15, 20 minutes to have discussions about what we were going to do on Mondays.
Yeah, it was.
But I don't think that would have been anywhere near as short as that if we hadn't have worked on Here of All Places.
Yeah, it kind of gave us an idea of how we both work, what we both want to do, and we trust each other, don't we?
Exactly.
To get it sounding nice.
Exactly. And I think that you have always brought out the best in what I've made musically. It's like you know exactly what is the right thing to do. And I know that's a very, very objective thing to say.
But again, that stems from doing this Love and Sex on Fire.
Yeah.
That the early stages, like, he's going to want this, that's how he works, we do that. Yeah. That's how I work. It's weird. It's like a load of stuff flying around and it all gems together to make.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing that brings this full circle. I think the thing that we've been fortunate with in terms of the era of music that we've grown up in many ways, because obviously there have been some big changes in terms of streaming and physical CD sales and stuff changing. But we grew up in the generation of GarageBand. So we were able to track things on a very cheap piece of software and overtrack it and go, oh, cool, if I play this, then someone else can play that. And I'd say that Local Heroes would not have existed in the same way because I was able to kind of work out what Jack might play over my rhythm guitar part with that stuff, right? And I'm sure you were the same because you were like, if I can play some drums on this, then I can put some other things on top of that. And I can build out from this groove.
Yeah.
And I think with this album in particular, with Songs About Jane, it's all a foundation on which to experiment and play and create good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we've been lucky with. I think when Spotify became a thing in 2009, it meant that we could go back and listen to loads of different things.
Yeah.
We didn't have to go out and buy a CD. We didn't have to take a punt on that. So, for example, I remember watching, this is really random, so stay with me, but I remember watching a BBC documentary on Fleetwood Mac, right? And I was transfixed on the story of Rumours. I thought, this is really cool because you've got all this kind of intrigue and them falling out with each other.
Yeah, behind the scenes drama kind of going on.
But it's a great rock record.
Yeah.
Right? I could just go and stream that straight away. I didn't have to go to HMV and spend 15 quid on the off chance I didn't like it.
You had no legwork to put in to get that result. And it's weird you should say that, because I vividly remember Songs About Jane was a CD that my mum and dad had in the car.
Exactly the same.
I remember listening, and the same with the Hopes and Fears, the Keane album. We listened to them my godparents lived down near Reading.
Yeah.
And I remember vividly listening to those two albums back to back on the way down.
Yeah.
On the journey.
Yeah.
And I remember the red cover with like the Jane.
Yeah.
It must be Jane on it.
Jane, that's what
it's got to be Jane.
Yeah.
And I remember the green cover from the Keane thing, and it's those memories that stick with you.
Yeah.
And I think half the beauty of it's gone with streaming, but at the same time, it's a lot more accessible.
Yeah, and I think when I started doing gigs out of uni, I feel like Spotify Premium was the gap between me, like someone sending me a set list and I could put it on in the car on the way to the gig and have a listen and go, I don't have to buy 19 different CDs or a soul compilation.
How did people go about depping before?
I just don't know.
Dig through the album collection and get one of each track out ready for it.
Yeah, exactly. And you do wonder, like, I think in many ways we've had that's that foundation that we've both got where we can go in and we can go, let's go into this space and record these things. Yeah, that sounds like a guitar. That sounds like drums. Let's put them together. Oh, you can hear them both at the same time. Great.
Yep.
What songs can we do? Oh, well, we both played this one before because we were influenced by this and we've listened to this in the car. I think in many ways we've been very, very lucky with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think the best listening happens in the car as well.
100%. And that's, you know, I love the idea of making an album of songs that is going to be played in the car.
Right? We've all sat on the driveway.
Yeah.
Not even going anywhere, just to take a mix from the computer to see what it sounds like in the car.
100%.
Every time.
Bruno Mars has a Cadillac that he does it in.
Yeah, just on the drive.
Yeah.
Just goes outside and that's it.
Apparently that's exactly what it does because he knows that if it sounds good in there, it sounds good anywhere.
You see, I think we're missing a trick because if we could get like an outboard mixing desk on a dash, you could just mix in the car.
I thought you were going to say a Cadillac, but also that too, yeah.
We'll get both. A Cadillac and a big Midas desk.
Perfect. Oh, I think it'll fit in there perfectly. So that is the real full circle on this, isn't it? And I think we could break down the songs and Songs About Jane, but I think most importantly it's an album. Again, I was listening to it earlier again by sort of cheating ahead of this. I think it's just a very listenable album, and
I think that's why I've not listened to it as an album in the lead up to this podcast, because it just comes on my playlist so often anyway. I never feel like I'm far away from that album. I feel like I'll listen to a song off that every year. I've probably listened to that album, each song on it, at least once a year since it came out.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. Yeah.
It's strange. It's always just on the shelf ready to...
Yeah,
and I never get bored of it.
No, and we both agreed straight away this is a good set of songs to talk about for this particular podcast. So, as we draw this to a close, I have 2 questions to ask you. This is this is your desert island disc moment.
Okay.
So you shouldn't be too scared about this, but I'd be really interested to see what your response to this. And because you're the first person to answer these questions, any future guest is going to have an upper hand on you with this particular thing. Right?
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Because they'll be able to go, so it's going to be the same questions.
Okay.
Yeah?
You're on a leaderboard like Top Gear.
That's it. I'll tell you what, on that, there was always someone on that leaderboard. Was it JK?
Yes.
Who is that?
Jamiroquai.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's what he goes as.
Interesting. Yes. I did not know that.
And he was always high up because he's a car nut, isn't he? So.
Is he really? Yeah. And I always wondered that. And I thought, oh no, JK's the one. I thought, is it JK Rowling?
Yeah.
I missed that episode.
I'm sure he's got a Ferrari collection worth about 4 million.
I did not know that. So, question. Okay, for the leaderboard, for number 1 on the leaderboard, hypothetical scenario for you. You have just come out of an interview for your dream job.
Okay.
Right? And you've got the job. You get in the car. What's the first song that you're playing?
Oh. Crikey. This changes from day to day.
If it happens today, then?
If it happens today...
It's happened today.
This is going to sound so like corny, because not only is it 2 years old, but it's also a really cheesy house song. I'd probably listen to Lighter by Nathan Dorr and KSI.
Okay.
You'll know this, I've always had a weird affiliation with electronic music.
Yes.
And I think it stems from, 1, it's quite percussive. It's got that solid beat all the way through.
Yeah.
2, there's not a lot of chord building involved. A lot of it runs off bass line and melody, so it's quite easy to make.
Sure.
I've always enjoyed making it. 3, I love dancing about to it, especially if I've had a beer or whatever.
Yeah.
And so me and Beth, my girlfriend, we went to Ibiza this year, and it kind of reignited like a really
amazing.
housey vibe in me, which I thought I'm 30 next year. The last chance to sort of go and pretend that I can fit in this scene.
I like it.
But yeah, so I'm big into the house at the minute, and I know that's a really cheesy pop song, but it's just a feel good song.
And that's the feel. That's your justification behind that, is that you would feel good listening to that track.
If I put my head in that situation, that scenario now, I've just come out the interview, I'm buzzing. I've got, I don't know, the dream job, for example, would be gigging for someone massive.
Absolutely.
And they've just offered me it. I'd be in the car, bopping my head, and it'd be on, and it'd be one that I can't wait to get home to tell people that, or share it with the people that I love, that I'm doing the job.
Yeah.
That's what I'd listen to.
Okay.
Cop out, I know.
No, I don't think it's a cop out at all. I think it's a really good answer. And it's like, I think it's interesting when people say, on this particular day, I might be different on different days for different things. I always think that music is a bit like food, in the sense that you might have your favourite meal of all time, but you're also, what are you hungry for right now? It's to me, it's exactly the same thing.
I think that's what the main thing is with me in music. I'll get a song or an album or a playlist, and I'll kind of binge it, because that's where my head's at for that month.
Yes.
So like, I've been listening to this house playlist now since I got back from Ibiza.
Yeah.
And it's just starting to phase out, and I'm bringing some other stuff back in, and some of the rock and that. But it is very much what I'm in the headspace for at the time.
Yeah.
I don't really have like favourite albums or favourite songs. Like songs about Jane I'll always listen to and things like that. But it does very much vary what mood I'm in.
Yeah.
What I've been doing, what's inspiring me. A lot of the time it's what's inspiring me to produce, and then I listen to stuff similar to what I want to produce or what I want to make. So.
Yeah. And I think that's the same. It's like, realistically, like, if I thought about it in a food sense, it's like my favourite meal, really, if I look back over the course of my life, is something like a really sort of nice, cheesy, creamy pasta dish.
Man.
So like the tuna pasta that my grandma used to make is my all-time favourite meal, 100%. But earlier on today, this is a weird confession, I know, I just absolutely sent a pack of Jammy Dodgers.
Yep.
And that, right in that point,
that was what you wanted.
That was my favourite food.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
What I mean?
That's it. You can't pick a favourite. It's just whatever at the time. Because emotions change and feelings change.
Yeah.
And music has always, for me, either brought out emotions or reminded me of certain times and situations, and that's what I grab for. So it is very much linked to my brain and my mental health and what state I'm in.
Absolutely.
Is what I'm listening to.
So, second part of this question, can you guess what I'm going to ask you?
No, I can't.
So,
should I be able to? Is it obvious?
Well,
is it an album?
If, in this hypothetical scenario, you've gone for your dream job, and you haven't got the job, what's the first song you listen to?
There's a few tearjerkers. Give me a second. I'm just going to bring up my Spotify tearjerkers.
I'm going to bring up my not got the job playlist.
Yeah. See, I don't know if it'd be an angry or a sad or a mixture of both.
Okay.
Let's have a look. What have we got? Sorry, I'm scrolling now.
Oh no, go for it.
That's a really, really hard question. There's a few.
It's interesting because you strike me as always been a very, very positive person.
Yeah, but I can get down and have a little cry in the car with the tunes.
And 100, I've been in that situation where I've definitely got up certain songs that I know will trigger me in a certain way.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, and I think maybe there's a song by a punk band called Neck Deep.
Okay.
Let me just find out. And
as in the band is called Neck Deep?
Yeah, the band's called Neck Deep.
Yeah.
The song is called A Part of Me. It's one of their really old songs. It's got a feature of a girl called Laura Whiteside on. It's quite an emotional ballady thing. I think I'd just put that on.
Yeah.
Or I'd go the other way and put something happy on to try and pep myself up.
And that's an interest. It goes two ways with that kind of thing, because there's to me, like you say, there's a deliberate. I do it certainly. Like if I'm sad, I might watch a particularly sad film that I know goes a certain way. But I think sometimes you go, right, okay, I'm going to buckle down with this. I'm going to listen to something really positive and kind of override.
Yeah,
this, right?
Again, that's like there's two different emotions you could take with if you've just been fired off from your dream job. It's like, oh well, it'll come again. Let's keep going. Yeah, that's stoicism. Or I'm going to take a minute and reflect and maybe get sad about it. I think music's really good for feeling your emotions like that, though, because if you're sad and you want to express yourself and you listen to that song and it brings out the tears and it makes you cry, you do feel better.
Yeah.
Or it brings out that anger. Like I listen to some heavy metal if I'm having a bad day and I can kind of get it out, scream out and let it out, whatever's affecting me.
I feel that, and it's interesting you've brought us something there as well about the idea of of success and going, oh, well, it'll just be the next thing. Do you think that in many ways, in the ways that we've kind of had shortcomings in the way that we've recorded over the years, do you feel like we've still carried on making music together regardless of the outcome of what's happened, right?
Yeah, that's all. And I don't think that will ever stop from either of us.
No.
Life might get busy or things get in the way, but there will always be a point where we come back and make music, and we will always make music individually or with other people as well. It's just how we work.
Absolutely.
It's what we want to do on this earth.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's certainly why I feel like I was put here for sure.
But I think that's like why people have like cry playlists and things like that, because they want to feel that emotion or they want to keep doing that thing. So it's the same thing creating the music as it is consuming the music, I guess.
Yeah.
You still want to create it because you've got that itch. You still want to listen to it because it makes you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
It all ties in, doesn't it? It's
Absolutely,
all creative.
it does. And there we go. I mean, what else can we say? I mean, we could talk for hours about this. We could, and I will almost certainly have you back on again.
Maybe we should do a charity 24-hour podcast.
Oh wow, that'd be
because
awesome.
I still think we'd be struggling to wrap it up at the end.
Yeah, we would. Absolutely, we would. We got that. There's so much history and there's so much, present and future, if you like.
Yes, yeah.
In what we're doing, and
now we only live literally around the corner. Well, we kind of live around the corner before. We've just moved north, but round the corner again.
Exactly. We've gone from South Doncaster to kind of East Doncaster.
Yes.
Gradually moving around. Will it be North Doncaster by a certain point? Will we move around like that?
Yeah, we can probably go clockwise back to Bawtry or something, back to Brampton at the end.
Perfect. I love it. Absolutely. So, Alex Byard-Cooke, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
And how is there anything that you want to say? I feel like, like when they get to the end of the podcast and say...
I feel like I should be plugging something, but I've got no albums coming out, no track. No, just keep listening. Well, first of all, I'm going to say, please, if you haven't already, join the Tea Break Club, because it's brilliant. Get on the mailing list. Great merch, of which I've got some, and I rep proudly. But yeah, follow Geoff. He's always working hard to make great music, great content, regardless of if it's videos, pictures, everything he puts out is thought about and really, really good. And just thank you for having me on.
Mate, it's a real pleasure. And to which I would say the Alex Byard-Cooke back catalogue of Ginger Tom, of Wasting a Summer, of Here of All Places, listen to these tracks and pay attention to the drumming, because to me, it's the fabric that holds these things together.
Thank you very much.
There is no better drummer in the world than ABC, and I will not take any other answer on that.
What's his name?
Oh yeah, what is his name?
He's better.
I've lost it. Is the only Ryan Dusick.
Ryan Dusick. Listen to Ryan Dusick. He's good.
Absolutely, 100%. Songs about Jane, because that's what this was about, right?
Yes, it was.
At some point, we talked about songs about Jane.
We might get invited to a Maroon 5 gig after this. You never know.
You never know. Absolutely, wouldn't that be great? Or like a Ryan Dusick gig, maybe.
That'd be good if he's still playing.
Absolutely. Hope you are, Ryan. There we go. Fantastic. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Take care.
Take care. See you later.